Good morning, good day, good night. Hello. At any time we're watching this program, my name is Eden Corbin. You are on Nation Watch, powered by the People's National Congress Reform. The day is November 23rd, 2025, and we are back for another program. Today, I have with me a distinguished young man who has started his political journey in regional politics. He has then been promoted, rather, to the position of mayor in the town of Linden. And today, as we speak, he is currently a member of the National Assembly on behalf of the Partnership for National Unity. Now, if you're au fait with politics the way that I'm au fait with politics, by now you would already know the guest who we have here today, which is none other than the distinguished Mr. Sharma Rahim Solomon. Good morning, Mr. Solomon, and
Hi,
welcome.
good morning, Comrade Corbin. Good morning for having me on this program. It's a pleasure to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. I know we were trying to get you here for the longest while.
Yeah,
Persons see the
yeah.
show, but they're
Mhm.
not familiar with some of the inner
I
work
know.
here, because most of the guests that we have here,
Mhm.
they're always busy, they're always engaged.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
first, I'd like to thank you for making the time
Certainly.
to speak with us this
Mhm.
afternoon.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's get straight into it. Let's not waste any time. So,
Mhm.
Mr. Solomon, your political journey began long before you took formal office. You've always been one rooted in activism, rooted in
Mhm.
youth engagement and community work,
Mhm.
specifically in the mining town of Linden. Please tell us, what are the defining moments
Mhm.
or moments that pushed you from community leadership into formal politics?
Very good question. I think, it was a good opportunity as a young man to be cultured around the Linden community. For those who are acquainted with Linden, once you're from the 80s, as an 80s baby, we had so much activities of social engineering, social constructing. It was the transitioning of the days of the retrenchment of bauxite, at least in my time of the 80s. But coming through the bauxite community of Linden, it was filled with activism, whether it was the unions, politics. So whether you were wanting to be a part of or not, you had no choice once you're from Linden to be an observer. And I think it was more than being an observer, it was also being a participant. And that opportunity presented itself as a young man when we had the different strikes and our parents who suffered, our parents who were retrenched from the company. And you saw the outcome in your own households. And those things were in themselves motivations as to why you would get involved in the social activities of the community. And not being someone to lay quiet based on having those exposure. It was important to lend your voice to the many struggles around the community. So those were motivations early to get involved, the community and its construct, but also when the opportunity presented itself to take the chance to get involved.
Wow. You've constantly referenced, or you've been referenced as a servant to
Mm,
humanity
mm,
over the years. At a day like today, after this impressive political background
mm,
that you've had,
mm.
what does that mean to you now?
It's a humble position to be titled by. I am not the one who give that title. I think more than anything else, it's the approach taken to my style of politics, which is I think of it more in a democratic approach to understanding how to get people involved. It's consultative, it's inclusionary, it is participatory. And I think that style allows people the opportunity to see where they can also be a part of the change that we are pursuing, which is a collective change. That in itself gives service to issues that affect people from different demographics and different backgrounds. And that sort of leadership, I think it's very, very relevant at this moment, especially in today's society, where we have people who have so much that they want to be a part of, but would not be given and afforded the space to do so. I think people respect leaders who are prepared to give them that opportunity.
And keeping the conversation on a personal tone,
Mm.
are there any experience throughout your personal life in Linden that you believe has shaped the way in which you choose to lead now, and it shapes the issues that you champion?
You're coming from Linden. Linden itself, a very rich community, resource rich, artisans. We've been taming the jungles of Guyana with the best skilled workers for decades. Where Linden stands today, it's most unfortunate. And to witness for the many years, especially under government, I'm 45 years old, and to think 33 years of a government, 33 years of a PPP government, I have witnessed most of the marginalization in that community. So to think of a very potential rich community, dubbed the heartland the region is, and the tongue is of Guyana, and to see that level of marginalization, to see that level of suffering, it is without choice that one must be involved in at least saying, and to the point of doing something about trying to resolve those sufferings. So I believe that in itself, to see where Linden is and where Linden can be in terms of the things to be done to fit Linden into the national agenda is a motivation for what is carrying my leadership forward.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, moving on, you moved from a regional chairman, then to mayor. For some people, that would be the pinnacle of their career, but not you. You now left the mayor. I mean, you still had some time as mayor. You left that position. You're now a member of the legislative arm of government. What attributes do you think have propelled your continuous rise in politics?
I think it's a level of consistency to be committed to the rule of law, principles of procedures, and the processes that should be in place. I am an institutionalist based on how I see my style of leadership in ensuring that if it's there to work, then we must allow it to work. And those sort of approach, moving from regional chairman to have the opportunity to see how that institution functions and then move that to the municipality and to take those as baseline for an opportunity to learn to manage these institutions, to see how to put together budgets, to see where budgets become relevant at that granular level at municipal levels, and even to see what is coming out as issues and how to aggregate those matters at the RDC, at the municipality, within communities, and then how to bring them to an articulative position, and more so in the National Assembly, how to bring those very grassroots issues that are affecting people at regional and municipal level and allow them to be heard in the National Assembly. I think that is a transition that is going to help me on behalf of those thousands of residents in Region 10 and the wider Guyana to explain in a more, I think, in a very concise way. It's always good to sound fancy and to present all the big numbers and data, which the government many times confuse people with. But then those type of growth numbers and statistics does not equate to the type of development that we see on the ground and how it affects people with cost of living, how it disadvantages people when it comes to civil liberties and things like those are very, very important when you get a chance to see at the regional level, to see at the municipal level, and how to transition that into the National Assembly and to articulate them quite clearly. I think is very, very crucial and important.
Indeed. And you would have mentioned earlier about the skill and the unique nature of Lindeners. Now, considering that Region 10 has always been a unique political and economical landscape, what do you think, looking back at it now, were your biggest challenges when you were regional chairman?
Working in an opposition environment is never easy. I think what was fortunate for us is that we had the minority government of Dano Ramatar, which I would like to say Region 10 in 2011 did quite well to ensure that that was indeed so a reality of the one seat of, in fact, the minority Ramatar government. Because in 2006, we had over just about 6,000 votes for the party. In 2011, we got over 12,000 votes for the party, which we brought back the seat to the party, giving us back 2 seats in the party. Those type of environment that we entertained was not just in an opposition environment. It was in a very vindictive environment. Because of that outcome, you saw immediately after that decision of the election results, an imposition that came to Linden months after for an almost 1,500% increase in electricity. So outside of the victimization and the marginalization of the community, you then found further hardship coming to the community. So those sort of challenged environment of having an opposition council to work with, of having an environment where government, not only with their vindictive and marginalized behavior, but now with this sort of ruthless approach to see Linden even suffer further. Those were indeed tough times. But I think what was most encouraging and what remains important in the community of Region 10 and Linden would be the people and their resilience. And that is where we turn to ensure that people understand then, and they do know, that the conditions under which Linden exists should not be for any community in this country. I'll give you an example. To date, Linden still is with one television station. And it sounds simple to some people, but that in itself is a violation of our fundamental constitutional rights and human rights to access information unimpeded and uninterrupted. So those type of environments, as you ask, of challenges to even communicate to your constituents, to be able to engage and to freely speak, are themselves current challenges that Linden region still face. And those are things that we will certainly overcome with this sort of resilience. And you ask, consistently using the rule of law, using the institutions and what is available. And I have always said this too, just before you move to the next question, that all options must be on the table when it comes to working from a position of opposition in relation to this government, in terms of ensuring consistency and ensuring that sort of resilience is there to overcome whatever struggles or challenges come your way.
And as we're on the topic of the regional chairmanship, we know coming off the heels of the election, there were some issues in relation to the Regional Democratic Council in Linden. And I know you would have already placed some comments out in the public in relation to that. I watched it, and I was informed as well. So not to go too deep into that, but would you like to address that briefly now?
I think the good thing about elections, and I think this 2025 elections, is that we saw a lot of new demographics coming into this, young people, certain ethnicity that never really got involved. But I think what was unfortunate is the level of education behind the electoral system and process. That many times we think at the end of September 1st, elections conclude and the process finishes. But we don't know about a council and how do we get to a chairman and how do we as councillors elect a chairman. So we don't know about representative democracy and how councillors on behalf of constituencies and constituents go into council and represent them. So I think those misunderstandings were exploited by new political comers on not taking the time to educate these demographics and not seeing that as part of their political responsibility to ensure that after September 1st, the process continues to ensure that, especially young people, what becomes of representative democracy, how councillors are able to come to a point of a chairman. So in Linden, we have a four-party situation where, though the majority went to the win party, what they would have had was the popular vote among those four parties. And in those parties themselves are the majority when it comes to representative democracy and first past the post, or in fact, proportional representation. So those things we had to explain. And as you said, not to go into details, but we took the time as responsible politicians. And it has now brought a political consciousness of people in Region 10 that Win did not win the region to the extent that they can dominate, say what they want. They have to compromise, they have to work. And I think we explained our position, which would have been that we started out asking for committees because we know who got the popular votes for the chairmanship. We started out asking for the vice chairmanship. So we did not arrogantly believe that we are not in a position to negotiate or reason, but we did not get that reciprocal response in terms of a trusted partner when it came to those negotiations. So I think at that point, we placed our candidate in the race, which got favored support from councillors in that RDC council.
And that was across the board.
That was across the board. So the configuration is 9-9, where Win is with 9 councillors, and the opposition, if you put it that way, which includes the APNU with 5, the PPP with 3, and FGM with 1, makes up the other 9 councillors. And with a secret ballot, I've said this, there is nowhere you can say who voted where or when. You know, that is between the conscious position of those councillors. Again, those things were never explained to the electorate, especially a young public who wouldn't understand that at that point, what representative democracy means is that you've surrendered a portion of your sovereignty to councillors and members of parliament to act on your behalf. Correct. And the decisions they make are on your behalf, even if it means to identify a chairman or policies that you may like or don't like, it is on your behalf. And I think that is where we are with those. And it is a concern of the APNU and the region to think that Region 10 at this moment doesn't have an outcome of a chairman. We have budget preparations. We have matters that are occurring with projects in the region that we'd like to see properly monitored and given oversight. So it is an obstruction for the work in the region that we hope the Minister of Local Government, as much as we see her doing a lot of other work, this is priority for Region 10.
Awesome. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you know, becoming a mayor is a big deal anywhere in the world. You have not only been a mayor, but you are now a member of parliament. So I want to know what prompted this decision for you to accept that position, and how do you see your role changing from mayor to MP?
Listen, this is a very I don't want to say it's a good transition of quick understanding. I think it helps because of the type of grassroots work that comes with the mayorship. And what we made mayorship in Linden, we were out. We had an open door policy. We were in constituencies frequently. So again, what that did was equip as it is doing now. But in this National Assembly role, our adjustment, in fact, my adjustment is one which I take quite seriously of the issues, especially as it relates to constitutional matters, and ensuring that at the level of accountability, as an institutionalist, again, to see the institution of the RDC, to see the institution of the municipality, and to now see the institution of the National Assembly work, there's a common thread that I'm recognizing so far, which is the issue of governance, of ensuring that these institutions are allowed to work. I'm now going to see how that works out at the National Assembly. But as I said to persons, my style of politics, and I'm certain in line with the APNU and the PNC, is that all options remain on the table when it comes to representation of our people, whether parliamentary or extra parliamentary. Those are things now in the National Assembly. It'll be able to see how those those things are working in terms of governance. For example, we see the speaker to date cannot convene to have an opposition leader. Those are themselves breakdown on how institutions are working to ensure accountability and transparency. So that transition from mere of the work done is helping. But there is a common thread within all of those institutions, especially under PPP government, that says that they're not allowed to function. And that in itself is an obstruction for the Guyanese public in terms of accountability and transparency.
And you have been one of the more notable younger leaders within the party. Specifically, we can't get away from the impact that you've had in Linden. I had the opportunity to witness in person one of your campaign presentations, and it would have been by far the best crowd reception that I've seen. The way the Lindeners love you, the way they adore you, and the way they respect you. Now that your position has shifted to a more national role, there may be concerns in relation to what local representation in Linden will look like. How do you address those concerns?
I think, again, the good transitioning from chairman to mayor is that I know how these institutions work, and I am continuously focused on how they work because they support each other. So to have that experience as now a member of parliament keeps me in line with those organizations still. And as a member of the APNU, we caucus frequently with our municipal and RDC councillors at this moment. So our issues are aggregated again. You can't get to the National Assembly without staying connected to your constituencies through your municipalities, through your RDCs. You cannot get to the National Assembly if you're not connected to the issues that are coming out of these constituencies. So I think it helps because of the connection I had before of knowledge and institutional understanding of how they work. But it also helps because I am well acquainted with councillors in these organizations of the municipality and RDC, and act more as an advisor to ensure that in these caucuses, we know how to ensure that we bring a common narrative so that we can articulate it clearly on behalf of the people that we represent.
Awesome. Now, shifting more to party topics now. We know that over the year, you have been a key, I would say, stakeholder in restructuring the party, especially considering some of the internal tensions that we've been observing over the years. Where do you see the party today compared to 10 years ago when you entered as a chairman, a regional chairman?
We had at the time, and God rest the soul of our beloved General Secretary, Oscar Clark, who served more like a teacher when I came about in the type of active politics. I am in politics since 1992, or around the PNC since 1992, at the community level, but with the opportunity to get actively involved in 2011 as regional chairman. The party, as I said before, in 2006, we lost a seat in the region. The party was not in the best shape. And with Comrade Clark's institutional approach to ensuring that we do things right, before we turned up to a Congress, for example, our groups had to demonstrate that they held meetings and showed minutes of those meetings. They showed that they had held activities. For example, we promoted events such as the Mash Bash, which brought back a 23rd of February celebration, and party groups were able to organize themselves, which allowed them to show that they had their chairman, their secretary, and the ability to do a certain type of thing. And then behind that organization, they were able to mobilize to get an outcome for that activity. And those type of teachings from Comrade Clark helped us because in that sort of restructuring from 2011, it helped to mobilize for an outcome that we had in 2012. Because having party groups organized and be able to mobilize any activity such as a protest action, such as an election, it is easy to get them to be involved and to get their communities involved. So in that period, it was a good opportunity from Comrade Clark, who, notwithstanding, we thought may have been to keep us out. You know, at some point when we reconciled our differences with Comrade Clark, and, you know, it was such a nice thing to have the opportunity to do. It was where he demonstrated was really the lessons to learn. I think the party must then recognize the importance of those institutions, the institutions of member, that every member must know that they can move from member to leader, that every member must know that they hold the responsibility of knowing the party's constitution, that every member must understand their value to the party and the other institution of the party groups, to know that their significance in the communities matter, and the work that they can get done in those communities are very, very important and significant. And then the districts, in keeping those groups very functional, organized, and in tune to issues within the town, the region, and have those districts very able to come to general councils and give their outcome of what the regions are doing and what they want to see the party moving forward. I think those were things that helped to shape me, that allowed that sort of structuring in Region 10. My absence, I would say, 8 years after 2015 and returning in 2023, a lot would have changed, and I don't think we would have adapted too well to those changes. And it reflected itself in September 1st, whether those were campaign financing, the way young people responded to the party, and so many things. I'm certain a very good audit of the party might be able to give us some more insightful information on.
And I like how you mentioned that with the young persons. You know, we've seen coming off of the heels of the September 1st election that the traditional politics or that scheme has been shifting, and now there is a normal disconnect between traditional politics and the young voters now. But we now see that that particular chasm is opening wider.
Certainly.
How do you think, as this has been as somebody who has been in politics since you were a young person? I mean, you're still young, but since you were a younger person, right? You were in politics since you were a younger person now. How do you feel, or what do you feel can be done for us to reconnect with those youths who have been, you know, disenfranchised or don't feel interested in traditional politics?
I think we have to let them know that these issues matter to them. I think we have to find a way to create this sort of narrative. The issues are there, they know them. I think sometimes it's to make them understand how does it matter to them. And many times we are excluding young people from that dialogue and discourse. And I myself, that came through, and persons may many times refer to me as a disaffected or malcontent to leadership of challenging them. But like I said, I stick within the rules of what is there to be done and ensure that it is done, which includes allowing young people like yourself, and my deputy mayor, who's now the mayor, Mr. Blair, to be given that sort of guidance and leadership and support of where they can understudy, if not only me, but make it accessible for them to really believe in that principle and value of the party, that you can move from membership to leadership. And that inspires in itself young people to want to be a part of the party. Being given an opportunity to be, and like I said, my style of leadership is consultative, inclusionary, and participatory. So when we go to young people, that is the approach we should take to them. Consult with them. What are the issues affecting you? Allow them to be included in how they want to shape these situations. And then welcome their participation openly, young people like yourself, without the sort of restrictions to allow you to grow to your full potential.
Correct.
I think that is where the party is to move towards, as we are starting to see. And those are things, again, will be reflected in any detailed audit of the September 1st and the things that we have to do to adjust. As I said, being out of the party for 8, not out, but out of active politics from 2015 to 2023 and returning for local government election, a lot would have changed. And I don't think we adapted too well to those changes. And it is not, again, in those preliminary audits that are done, whether people who are doing their own reference today, and when the party will do its own. But at the same time, you see those changes that we have not adapted well to in the 1st of September election. You know, how do we still go out and raise resources, for example? How do we still go out and get young people's attention through sports and entertainment? And everybody think it's financing, it's a big deal. But how do we return to goodwill? You know, how do we ensure that we use that as a capital to get some of the things that we need to get done, especially with young people involved? We see around the world, whether it is in Bangladesh, whether it is Kenya, whether it is in Nepal, the Gen Zs and the millennials who are really taking these issues on. So they're not stimulated and motivated by a fine change, a looking for it, a eat a food. They really have things that are affecting them. I think this is where the party must find the means to connect to those young people in that consultative, inclusionary, participatory way to get them to be a part of the changes that we want to see and they too would like to see for themselves.
I like how you put it that way. But let's consider now the unprecedented growth that we've been experiencing as a country.
Yeah.
Do you believe the benefits are reaching the ordinary citizens? And for you, the citizens in the hinterland and mining communities, do you think with all of this, you know, increasing GDP and rapid investment and buildings going up like people pressure, do you think that the benefits are reaching the ordinary citizens of Guyana?
You know, that's a very healthy debate, especially when it comes to the economists and when it comes to politicians, whether growth do equate to development. And that's an argument that the government has used. You know, we see an exponential growth, not only in our aesthetics of bridges and roads, but we're seeing exponential growth in terms of the numbers that commodities are doing. Island gas is up. Bauxite is up 133%. Gold is going up. And all of the commodities are set to move, especially in the mid-year report by the finance minister. But when you have 48% of the public living in poverty, when you have our pensioners who are finding it difficult to get by, our single mothers who are finding a challenge because cost of living is outside of their means, our hardworking middle-class Guyanese who are feeling threatened because their civil liberties of justice get into them, then that sort of growth, when you turn the tap in the morning on, you have to wait a couple of minutes before you drain out that rust. You sit down to do some midnight studies and you have to turn on your phone light. You know, these are the realities of Guyana at the moment, you know.
Things that cook up can't fix.
You know, so at the end of the day, it is what sort of development are we seeing with this sort of growth that we are speaking about? I think that is really the biggest concern as it relates to especially the opposition on a few levels when it comes to accountability and oversight, to ensure that what we are getting, especially value for money, we get what we deserve, one. But secondly, when it comes to oversight, to ensure that what we are getting goes into the Guyanese pockets. We're not seeing that. And those are things this government is good to masquerade about. But one of the things I always say to people in the growth development discussion is how do we ensure that we are managing our resources and managing that which we get from our resources, and to ensure communities, as you said, Linden, that significantly contributes to the extractive sector. 60% or so of the resources that comes from or through Region 10 adds to the national development from the extractive sector. But that is not a reflection of the community. Many of our Amerindian villages that are now in line, gold prices are more than ever before where they are. But many of those communities that are around where mines are or where mines are extracting from, that is not a reflection of those communities. Whether you're doing extraction of timber in the Aichuni Kokwani area, that is not a reflection of those communities, which is up by 16%. So that growth development argument is something that must be changed in terms of the outcome of what is happening in the lives of Guyanese. And I think there is where we want to see good accountability and proper management and planning, not a 5:30 morning meeting by the president to then recognize that they're not planning to use these resources properly. And as such, you're not seeing the benefits in the development of the lives of the average Guyanese.
Wow. Now, coming down to the end of this, on a more, well, it has been personal, but this question particularly, I want to see what you say. What has been the toughest political moment of your career so far? And how did that shape you?
Um, I would, there are many, there are many. But the most unfortunate thing to have to deal with would be the deaths of those three young men. To see that a community was saying to a government that it is not that we're unwilling, it is that we're unable to meet this unjust request of 1,500% increase. And to see a government response to that is to send the state through its coercive arm of the police force with snipers. And this is not what we are assuming. This is what is in the Commission of Inquiry report. And gun down Guyanese for standing for their rights. Today, it's a tough thing to see those families that still suffer, to see Rodwell and to see Orlando, sons of Mr. Lewis, who raised, those boys went to UG, Mary got their family, and Mr. Lewis, 14 years on, have not been there to know Shemrai. His mother is not well. He was the sole provider for her. And even Ron. Those were tough moments to see families who suffered because a community was saying to a government that your imposition will cause us unbearable hardship. But I think in all of that, the community is grateful for today. Almost $6 billion is what the community certainly would have had to certainly endure. I think those are some of the numbers that, and I think it measures more than that, is where we want to say Linden benefits today. Investments are there. You see that sort of hardship which the community would have faced otherwise. Outsiders are now coming in and also benefiting, which we welcome. Where you had 9 sawmills, you now have 39 sawmills because there is cheap, reliable power that allows for a growing manufacturing sector. And those were things we were really saying to government. Not only the hardship that you are bringing to the community, but a community that has been marginalized and not been invested in, expansion in the economy have not been done since the retrenchment days. Now that is justified by a stimulation of having the tariffs not removed, and now you have investments coming in. And those were the arguments we were making, and it's now vindicating us when you see these sort of investments coming. Unfortunately, 3 men had to lose their lives for that.
And how has that shaped you?
As a religious, spiritual person, I'll tell you this: as I leave this studio to return home, I will offer prayer to the gravesite of those 3 men. I do it every time I am leaving the highway. It is part of our understanding that we are grateful for the sacrifice, and we understand that in death, there is a journey that requires our thoughts and prayers. So it has shaped me deeply to appreciate my faith even more, but more so my commitment to the community, that we have an obligation and a responsibility to ensure that when there is a need for leadership in the face of injustice, that what come it may, we have to stand firm for our people.
All right. No, this wasn't in my initial questions, but based on what you said, you touched on several things there. More so the economic marginalization of Linden. So what I want to ask you is, what does a modern Linden look like to you, considering the growth and development in your mind? What does a new 2025 Linden look like?
Linden,
Or should look like?
Linden, the heart of Guyana. It is not a concept in abstract. It's a concept that can be pegged to the geography of where Linden is. It is embraced by the 3 main rivers of this country. It is in connecting 6 of the regions of this country. It moves most of the natural resources out of this country. It is equipped with the most skilled artisans in this country coming from the bauxite generation. So Linden is equipped with that sort of geography, and then the social construct of Linden in itself, of all the other things, whether it's cheap electricity, reliable electricity, accessibility to road and river. It is no reason why Linden should not be advanced beyond the way and the state it is, as the heart of Guyana. Where do we see this heart of Guyana as such a vital, critical role to play? And it is not how do we fit Linden into the national agenda. So that is what the government would want us to say many times. They will fit Linden into the national agenda. No, Linden is saying how we will fit into the national agenda is based on these very bountiful things that we have. We had several studies done in the past that show Linden could be a green capital city by a German enterprise. We had the Linden Enterprise Network that came in and they did their own studies too. I think what we are not getting from government is that reciprocation of interest to ensure that these studies are worked on. Even coming out of the 18th of July, we had the 21st of August agreement that Comrade Norton negotiated on our behalf, that outlined an economic approach to ensuring we advance Linden to incorporate all of these features that really shines it to be the heart of Guyana. So a modern, growing Linden to see transport, to see duty-free zones, those are the destinations we want to see it. And in fact, those are things we will be speaking about more frequently. Linden already enjoys a lot of duty on items because of that which we were considered after the HIPIC highly in debt country. Linden was one of the you call depressed communities. A lot of concessions were given. And we believe to add to that could continue to see the modern advancement of Linden when it comes to. We are not short of any sector. Manufacturing, we are a growing manufacturing hub. Agriculture, we boast since in the 70s, the Upper Berbice Agricultural Project, the largest agricultural project between the hinterland and the coastland. We have the best tourism sector set by TAG 2 years ago in the heart of Guyana. Best place for tourists to do bird watching. We have kayaking, we have the tongue week. We have the best area for trade and investment. We had our trade and investment program this tongue week last. So on all of those levels also, the potential is there for growth and development. Again, it is if we have that reciprocal partner in government to ensure that these things are realized, especially taking away that marginalized, victimized sort of approach to seeing development in the community, where you don't see the obstruction in the municipality by a PVP appointed clerk, where you don't see the obstruction in the RDC by a PPP appointed REO, where you don't see ministers taking powers beyond these institutions and overlooking them and really breaching the Constitution and allowing those institutions to work. So you may not have the bridge that provides $60 million a year to the municipality, that being taken away. So those things with government's lack of not obstructing, but government's willingness to ensure that these connecting means by which Linden can really elevate to that point of realizing that heart of Guyana desire is something that, that we will continue to hold government to see that they do. Again, not to see where, as government would want to say, how do you fit in? But we are telling government and any government, here is how we are fitting into the national agenda. We are part of this. And that is not an arrogant approach, because the experience of Linden or Region 10 and my own personal experience as regional chairman said that the very first time in 2018 that regional governments can bring national governments to sit to the table, as we did, to negotiate a way forward and an outcome, especially for a community that has been neglected for so long, and where we can create the opportunities and space to ensure that we advance those communities.
Awesome. And my final question would be, when all is said and done, what is your hope that the legacy, or what do you think, or what would you like to be your legacy, not just in Linden, but for all Guyanese, that when your work is done, this is what we should remember about Sharma Sullivan?
Again, my humble religious position say we don't believe in statues and billboards. So I guess just humble servant is good, that we were able to serve and give service in the interest of people to ensure that, one of the things outside of the organizational means to give service, I think innate to every individual, our own ability to demonstrate who we are. I think that is most important. I always say to people, nothing else lives after you except your name, nothing else. So you will be nothing except what comes after that name. You can either be a thief man, you can either be a good man, but that name is what says, who is that man?
Correct.
I think that is most important. The way we conduct ourselves in these public offices and the things that we are able to get done on behalf of people are what we will be remembered by. And that brings you to that humble position that your name is what becomes very important when they remember you by that.
Wow. That's truly insightful. And I've been doing this, and I would like to give you the opportunity as well to give a charge to the Guyanese, to the youths, to the Lindeners, and especially our own party comrades. Give them a charge in going forward into ending this year and going into the new year. You can go ahead.
I am not the type of politician that sugarcoats things. This is going to be a tough fight. This is a tough position we find ourselves in, but not an impossible one to overcome. We've been many times hit down before, but I think, and I know within our capacity, again, I like to reflect the PNC represents for the most structured organization in this Anglo-Saxon Caribbean sphere of things. And it could be measured and tested. And I think as party comrades, as I said earlier, the member must be able to appreciate their role. And the party at the same time must be able to encourage that member to see the value of their role. I think once those things are done, and the party with those institutional approach to its member, its constitution, its groups, its district, its general council, Congress, once those things are allowed to work and function, young people, party stalwarts, people who are supporters of the party can rest assured that this is a party coming out of 2025, notwithstanding the challenges we have encountered out of the last election. Those are the guiding principles that will take us forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Solomon, for
No
being
problem.
here today. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Eden Corbin, and you are in tune for another episode of Nation Watch. We hope to see you next week and all other weeks following. Thank you.